It's Kev from Smart here. Just while we're waiting, if you'd open up a internet browser and put in classlab.com, as you can see on my screen here, and that number 75222842, that's my number for my Smart notebook. So whenever I do an activity, that number is particular to me. It's a single sign-in number, but that means that during the webinar you'll be able to participate with me with some of the activities that we're going to do. I'll just give you a second or two to do that. Okay, so today's our last webinar for this term. We will be doing a series of webinars next term, and as I've suggested in the past, if there's topics you'd like covered off on, please feel free to go to the ANZ Smart website and put something into our inquiries email there. So today it's Kevin again from Smart, and our moderator is Crystal Ryan. So if you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free just to put them into the question box and we'll answer them at the end of the webinar. So today's webinar is really about trapping classroom feedback. So if we think about the students having devices, the internet and Wi-Fi, asking questions and receiving feedback from students has really changed significantly. In the old days when I was teaching, basically I might have 3 or 4 students in a class who were prepared to give me feedback. They were never critical. So but basically if I went into a class and asked them something at the start of a lesson, like what do you know about the solar system, I usually just got the same 3 or 4 kids. At the end of the unit of work I might say, how did you all go? Interestingly enough, nobody was going to say you didn't teach that very well, Mr. Daly, and these are the points we didn't get. But things have changed now. Students have devices and we have ways of working with students' devices, and that's hugely powerful. Feedback itself has been recognised by lots of educational researchers, Hattie and Mazarno in particular, and I'll just leave that slide up for a second so you can have a read of it. But basically all their research points to the fact that one of the most important factors, one of the 10 most important things in terms of student achievement is accurate feedback. And accurate is really an important word there. So from my point of view, it's probably not just about trapping that feedback. It's also really about being able to capture and keep that feedback to analyse it. So, and we'll talk more about that as we go through the webinar. So, okay. If you're interested in any of that Mazarno Hattie research, I'm sure we can pop it up on our website for you. So, although it's very easy to find anyway on the web. Okay, we talk a lot in schools about formative and summative assessment, and I'm sure most of you are totally across that. But basically, summative assessment is what we think about as, you know, at the end of a topic. So giving the students a test, getting them to do a talk, something like that. So, you know, when they've finished. So formative assessment is much more about as we go through a unit of work, capturing our students' understanding. So we often talk about this as summative assessment being assessment for learning, and formative, sorry, the other way around, formative assessment being of learning and summative being for learning. So, but gone really are the days where a teacher would hand out a test into a class, pick that test up, take it home. In a few days' time, they will have had time to correct it, they hand it back to the class. It's certainly not instantaneous, and certainly it's very much focused on the individual students' results. So now we have students with devices, and we've got teachers with devices as well. We can harness that to create great instantaneous feedback and capture teachable moments. So verbal feedback from students is often forgotten by the time you get finished the lesson. And often students, not all students contribute to feedback if it's done verbally. So with that in mind, Smart's created a few great tools for you to capture both summative and formative assessments. So I'll just go through a couple of those. The first one I want to talk about is in Lab, and if you remember from previous webinars, Lab is up here. So I've just got the little screen capture here. So what I've done is clicked on Lab. I can see Shout It Out here, and Shout It Out's a great tool for gathering feedback from students. And I'll just actually open up a Shout It Out for us. So I've put this Shout It Out on one of my notebook pages. Very easy to do. I'll show you what I did. I'll actually edit this one so you see it. But when I put up my Shout It Out, right at the start, you can see, I'm just going to remove my previous students from when I did this. So, in fact, I think I just took 2 of our students out. Sorry, you might have to log back on. So if you just log back on those couple of students who are on, I thought that was from a previous session. I do apologise. An obvious mistake. So, but one to keep in mind. So if you just re-enter the code and rejoin the activity, that'd be great. So well done, Valencia and Trevor. So basically, I'm just going to that class code, and I've just clicked on the little arrow there. That's individual for me. So anything I do with Lab, that class code will be used by the students. Once they come on once during a lesson, unless the teacher throws them off, the activity will change for them automatically. So I'm just going to close that little window now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you with this. So one of our students is contributing. So basically with this one, we select a category and we type in whatever we want. And the nice thing about this is that students tend to be pretty honest about what they do. Now you'll notice a couple of things there. One, I can see Valencia's name and Trevor's name. When I do this, and I'm just going to click up my little action box here, so you can see that I can actually turn off the contributor's name, and now instead of seeing their name, I just see a little icon. Probably much better to do that. Students are much more honest when they answer stuff anonymously because they're not, is somebody going to think something bad about this? So we can see we're getting contributions. We're web-based, so those contributions could be from anywhere, basically, at any time. So you don't necessarily have to be in the class, but we think about this being used in the class. I have seen Shout It Out used from school camps. So, okay, so I'm just going to edit this activity just so you see how it was created. Every activity is just 3 steps. So I've just put that activity. You'll get a little message saying it's paused. So, but that little activity in SmartLab, just 3 steps. One, I've got a category set up, so that gives me my little items at the top. I can just be randomized, so that's just like a blank screen. I can have text or images. I can say how many inputs the students get, and I can show or hide students' names. So just 3 little inputs to do that. I'll just finish that. And the nice thing for me is that basically at the start of a lesson, I just want you to think about us coming into a lesson asking our students, what do you know about the topic of the solar system, which is what we're going to do in a second. 3 kids put up their hand, normally the same 3 kids. Here, what we can do with Shout It Out is we can trap prior knowledge. All students will contribute, and all students will contribute very honestly, particularly if you do it anonymously. The key for you is that information. If we imagine that this curriculum document over here on the left was my solar system unit of work, right at the start of that I've trapped prior knowledge about what the students know, and it's embedded within my curriculum document. That means I can actually take it back to other teachers who are teaching a similar topic, and we can compare notes. For me, I always start any curriculum activity in Notebook with a shouted out to capture prior knowledge, and at the end of the unit of work I always use the shouted out for post to see if they had any issues, what they'd like to know further, go further with. So I've just got another little example of a shouted out for you, and those people who are following with me, sorry, we're just a little bit slow here. So this one is about the solar system, and I'll show you how we create this in a second. So my internet's just a tiny bit slow, I'm sorry. The activity is loading. When I click the activity, so that activity will start for the students. So they will select a area to write into, say fun facts or questions, and we will gather that information within our curriculum document. So again, don't forget, we can turn the contributor names off, so there's no issues around if somebody feels a bit threatened by answering stuff within this. And I can pause contributions, we can discuss them. You can see I can move contributions around on my screen. So very much like Padlet, we can do these kind of things quite easily. So how long does it take to get to Mars? Good question. I suppose it depends what sort of rocket you're in. So anyway, but you can have a great fun with this with the kids. Kids answer honestly, but the fantastic thing is you're not going to walk out that door without capturing the feedback from the students, and that's really important in terms of what Hattie, Mazarno and people like that say. And this information pre and post can drive your curriculum changes in your planning meetings. So I'm just going to very quickly show you how to create a shouted out. So obviously this is very much assessment for learning. So I'm just going to quickly click on my Smart Lab. Again, apologies about my internet being a little bit slow. Shouted out is just within here. You notice it does tell you that kids need devices to do this, so I'm just going to click. So if we imagine this is my post, I'll just use randomize this time. I'm just going to use text, but as I said, we can use images, which is great for our younger students. I'll give my students 4 inputs. I think it's about 120 characters, so get the students to think like if you're using Twitter. So, and basically when I go finish, that activity is created for me and ends up on that blank page. When I start that activity in 2 seconds, those students who've joined me previously will be able to take part in this activity. So see, it's a blank page. That can be quite good for sorting materials. So I'll just click on Start Activity. Now, just imagine me end of the unit of work. I say to the students, was there anything that you had issues with, or anything that you didn't really understand? So some student writes in, yes, sir. And they actually identify the issue that they had. Quite often that wouldn't happen if you're doing this stuff verbally. 2, you have that information trapped within your curriculum document to discuss with your colleagues after. So very easy. The one thing I've done a lot of, and I'll just show you, so in my gallery I've actually put in shouted outs. So in my content, you can see I've got shouted outs. They just live here. I've got them there so that they're quick and easy to get to. So I'll just insert a page on my notebook. If I want a quick response for students, say KWL, I just drag that out, drops onto my page, and all of a sudden, very quickly and easily, I'm able to grab feedback from students. I would suggest if you use graphic organisers, a few of those can be adapted into shouted outs, and then you can have them living within here, ready to go. So, okay. So that was the one we had at the start. I've just got living in my gallery. Okay, just moving along. Next, so I should have said to make it live in your gallery, basically click on your shout it out. You can see add page to gallery. You then just need to say whereabouts in the gallery you would like that to live. So any idea, I just put them in my shout it out folder. And the gallery is a great way to work with Notebook. The second feedback device that I'd like to show you today is Smart Response. If you've used the old clickers, think about that's what Smart Response does, but it does it so much better, and it actually does it off student devices. So again, probably much more for formative assessments, so end of cycle tests. So on my screen, it allows students to answer on their devices. We can stop this assessment as we go through it. So unlike a written test, we can actually stop and discuss our questions. And the nice thing is we can export our results. So I'm just going to take you through some slides of Smart Response and then show you a live example. So the first thing is students can do it on their device. They can zoom in, they can see images. So a lot more flexibility than that photocopied sheet as a test. The other nice thing is that as the students are answering the questions, it's basically the data is being accumulated for you as the teacher. So when you come in to write your test, you've got several things you can do. You can do multiple choice, true or false, multi-answer, and I've got an example that covers off on those for you after. And we can see here's a question. It's a poll or opinion, has a picture, and we put our questions in below, and this is the way the student would see it on their device. Again, everything Smart does, basically device agnostic, so we don't care if it's an iPad, a Samsung, a phone, it will work, a Chromebook, a laptop, as long as they can get to the internet, they can do this with us. So just moving along. What the nice thing about it is that we see the assessment live, and we'll see this shortly. So you see all your students come on board, and as they answer, you get a complete, I suppose it's like a dashboard just showing you where people are up to. And you can actually review question by question with the class, and students can look at their own questions as well, and at the end of any test they can actually go back before they submit their results and have a second go at a question if you want them to. It's got a couple of nice features, Smart Response. One of the things I really like is that if it's a text-based answer, like in Wordle, you can make a word cloud to show which are the biggest responses, so, and they can be captured, which is quite nice. So a couple of features like that. Pardon me. You can export your results and aggregate them, and this is really nice in terms of if you're using a learning management system, or if you're good with Excel, you can actually do pretty interesting quizzes of data in Excel yourself. So I'll just show you what that looks like in Excel. So if we export our test into Excel, it looks like this. So straight away we can see the student's name, how many they got correct or incorrect, which ones were correct or incorrect. But just by using, say, a filter in Excel or a sort, you can actually crunch down yourself and see how the students went in that test. And a lot of the time, like a test, it's as much feedback for the teacher as it is feedback for the student. So if we saw that lots and lots of students got question 4 wrong, maybe we need to revisit that in some way. So okay, so that's just a little bit of an overview of Smart Response. Again, I'm just following with my theme of the planets here. Now, unless you've joined with me, you won't see a great deal happening on the screen, except as we go through. So this would just take a second to load, sorry. So I built this before, and I'll just actually show you, we probably won't answer this one. I'll just edit this one so you can see what it looks like, and then we'll answer the second one, and that will give you an idea of what happens with students. So I'm just going to hit my edit button. When I click on edit this activity, I'll actually see how this was built. It's quite easy for the teacher. There's a, and teachers can share information using Smart Response. So if I always think about working collaboratively as a teacher with my team. So basically, here's my true or false question. You can see, is the Earth the smallest planet in the solar system? I can see that the answer is false. So that's been created for me, and I've actually got a graphic for the students to see. Here's my next question. So how many planets are in the solar system? Again, it's a multiple choice, 1, 8, 10 or 13. The correct answer has been picked. So I'm just working my way through my questions. All planets only have one moon, and hopefully you're getting the idea of how this was constructed. Which of the following are not gas planets? And again, another multiple choice. And all systems revolve around that. And again, it's a short answer. So I can save this little quiz if I want to, and I'm just going to click on my little button here called Managed Content. I can have lists of items already done that I can bring in. Here's where I can save the quiz. I'm just going to click Next. I'm not going to make any changes to this one, but it just gives you a little bit of an idea of what this looks like. Here I add a title and I give the students some instructions. So their experience with this will be very much like this next one. The next one that I've created is to do with angles. And this one I'll actually start, and hopefully Trevor and Valencia, you won't mind answering a couple of questions just so we see. You won't get a great look at it unless you've joined the activity, but you will see on my screen the as students answer what happens. So I'm just going to start this this activity, and now I don't know where Trevor and Valencia are, but wherever they are, their little their device should be updating. Pardon me. And a new activity should be on their screen. And what happens is as they answer, on their screen, so you can see that my little questions are rotating through, so I very quickly get an idea of where the class is up to. At any stage, if I think things aren't going well, I can pause the contributions. So I can see Trevor's answered 4 questions, Valencia 3. Right at the end, now before the students submit, they get the option to actually they can go back over all of their questions and change any answers, and they can submit them whenever they're ready, and they don't have to. And once we get to the end, which won't be too long, we've only got a couple of people quizzing. I'll just show you what happens for the teacher at this point. Don't forget, I'm not having to grab up those bits of photocopied multiple choice questions or little tests. This is all being generated by the student's device. So I'm actually saving myself a lot of work as a teacher. And I might just show questions here. So we'll just get this out of the way. We'll just click on it. So how many angles of triangle? So basically, as I click through, this is what the students would have seen as they were answering this quiz. You can see highly visual, this one. And right at the end, and right at the end of that, I can actually, when I finish it off, I can actually take those results and put them straight into Excel. So from the point of view of teaching, great tool. Another way of gathering feedback for students, and it's probably not done enough, I don't think, is, so I've got a little maths widget here that I've incorporated into my notebook. It'll again just take a second to load. But I'm always very keen that students come to the board and work at the board as well. So basically this little activity is set up for the students to work at the board. If I've got groups of students, all I would do is I would click on my page and I would clone my page to give me maybe 5 examples of this for the students to use. With our smartboards, So particularly the CAP IQ board. So we can see here students working. Basically with the new smart boards, you just pick up a pen and write. Even on the older ones, it's still not a bad experience for the students, but whether we do it enough, I don't know. But basically, our students come up to the board. We want to trap feedback on their thinking around how they're going with parabolas. So I've got this activity done 5 times. I get groups of students to come up. They actually interact with the activity at the board, so the activity is very interactive, as you can see. The idea being to get the frog from there to the pond, and here's our formula. So, but the students do it, they do the activity, and then on this next page, I've actually got a place for my students to do some writing about their thinking. So blah-de-blah, oh, not very good without being at the board, but here's Mary and Frank writing there and their understanding of that activity and how they went. So how am I trapping feedback? When I save this notebook, I'm actually saving Andy, Mary and Frank's experience of doing that activity, and that's great for me to take back into a group to discuss. It's great for me to look at as a teacher, because quantifiably and visibly I'm seeing their learning and they're explaining it to me. So really good way to use the smartboard, bring the students to the board, get them to annotate their understanding. Another way of doing that in terms of trapping feedback is to use one of Smart's tools. We've got 2 lesson recorders. Basically one is embedded in Notebook and one's outside of Notebook. So I'll just show you where the one on the left is Smart Recorder. Basically that will record any actions that I do within my notebook. So for instance, if I had Smart Recorder turned on when I was doing this writing, well, I call it writing, so, but if I had, as we were doing this, I can record that and play it back as a little video within my notebook, but it's only recording actions within my notebook. The difference with the 2 recorders is this one, and I'll show you where they both live. This one records everything that happens on my screen. So if I'm going from notebook to a website to an Excel spreadsheet to a PowerPoint, basically lesson recorder will record everything on the screen. So where do these 2 recorders live? So lesson recorder lives in our add-ins over here on the left. It's very easy to use. Basically when I want to use it, I click on it, I click start recording, and then whatever's happening on my screen is recorded and saved. Again, if kids are annotating or explaining at the board in Notebook, a really good way to do this. The other recorder lives down here, and it's slightly different. You can see I'm in my systems tray, my smart icon there. If I click on this recorder, what happens now is I actually record everything that's happening. So if I swap between programs, I'm capturing everything. So I'll just click onto something here. If I click to AMP, I will be recording AMP as well as what's happening in Notebook. With this one, and I'll just get back. With this one, I'm just recording what's happening within Notebook. But a great way to capture feedback from students. I've seen some really good examples from our other smart educator in Australia, Helen Lacey. This is one of her slides, but she actually gets kids to record. She's got some very good examples of kids showing their understanding, and I'm sure Helen will be happy if we put a few of those up at the website for you. So hopefully we're getting the idea of capturing feedback within Smart's educational suite. The last thing that I really want to show you is how to capture within Smart AMP. Some of you may not be using AMP, but basically I'll click out to AMP. So if you've never seen AMP, I'm going to go live and show it to you, but basically digital collaborative space for students. When you buy Smart Learning Suite, you buy AMP. So I would encourage you to start to use it. We would happily send you some instructions about how to get going. So basically I'm going out to AMP, And here's an AMP space, very simple one. Down the left-hand side, I've got all my tools. I can see this is within the class test, and it's called test assessment. Within this one, basically, I'm going to click here. You can see as I click through, I've got similar questions to what I had with my response to. Similar kind of look and feel to it. I'll just add another assessment for you, just so I'm just going to give you that experience. So when I click create assessment in AMP, I'll just move this one down. So I've got 2 now. So basically when I click add question, I'm taken a little bit, I suppose I think of it outside of AMP, but basically I give my assessment a title. So it might have been planets. I pick what sort of question I want. So multiple choice, is Pluto a planet? In fact, that might be better to be a yes or no question. So I'll just go, I think Pluto is no longer a planet. I then just insert that question, true or false, a true or false question. So, oh, I'm lost. Do all planets have moons? So we're just very, very quickly going through. I insert that question. When I publish it, I'm returned to my AMP space, and you can see there's a little bit of thinking going on there. And so it looks a little bit like response to, but I'm in this web-based environment for students to do it. So I'm just going to go to another AMP workspace, one that's a bit more complete. So if we imagine students were working on the planets, and somewhere I might have a couple of assessments for those students to finish. If they've been working in response to it, we're very easy for them. Just like response to, I gather those responses up and I can see them. So the other area where you can pick up some feedback from students is when you're in AMP, you can use the messaging. So basically, here's some students commenting on this AMP space. So I'm actually picking up feedback from the students. And again, I always encourage students to be perfectly honest if they're not understanding something or if something isn't making sense to them. So just in summary, you know, SMART gives you several ways to capture and keep student feedback, both formally and informally. It can be used as assessment and in planning, and it can also, particularly with say SMART AMP, it can create that teachable moment for you. So in SMART Shout It Out, sorry. So SMART Shout It Out, great tool, easy to use, fantastic to capture feedback at that teachable moment, fantastic for capturing prior and post knowledge. More formally, response to, really good to use with your kids. You're not going to have to correct the test, and you can actually crunch the data quite easily. I'd really encourage you to use response and shout it out. And then if you do go down the path of using AMP, there's obviously some feedback tools that are embedded there for you as well. So we often pop stuff up at our ANZ Smart Tech website. So if, and again, as I say, please contact us if you have any ideas for webinars, please send those through. So we're always keen to engage our audience in what interests them. So any questions coming out of today's webinar?
Hi, Kevin.
Crystal, are you there?
I am. Hi, Kevin. Where can I find out more information on the things you showed us today so I can practice before using these feedback tools with my students?
It's a great question, Crystal. Basically at our website, and I was actually doing a bit of research before, so SMART do a lot of support stuff. So I'm at the SMART support site. I was just reading over some stuff on response to, so you can hear Here's how to create an assessment in Smart Response. Nice easy notes, lots of links. And the other thing you might consider doing is going to somewhere like our Smart how to use videos at YouTube. So this one really nice and easy to use. I don't know, you probably won't be able to, it's probably deafening in your all, sorry, but basically it just takes you step by step through how to use those. So at our website, at YouTube, lots of places you can go to actually get help in terms of using these things. And I would strongly suggest if you were to do a smart response or a shout it out, or even something in AMP, probably the best place to test it and work with it is in your planning meetings. You won't lose content, you can save your content, so but actually play with it as if you know, maybe you've got 6 teachers, 1 of you be the teacher, 5 of you be the students, and actually have the experience before you take it into class. So Crystal, were there any other questions coming from today's webinar?
I've got a final question here for you, Kev. Things have changed considerably in Notebook from the version I'm using. Are there likely to be further improvements to these feedback tools?
Thanks, Crystal. That's a very good question. Look, we're very aware. We're on Notebook 17 now. Notebook 17 is part of Smart's Learning Suite. Smart have done a huge amount of development with its software. A lot of schools we go to are still on Notebook 11.2, and part of the reason for that is it was the free software that came with the board. So I would strongly encourage you to have a look at Notebook 17, because Smart, when I started with Smart less than 2 years ago, we were on Notebook 15. So since then there's been several iterations of Notebook. Lots of things update all the time. So for instance, in Smart Lab, there's lots of new activities, there's lots of different things to do. Smart Response 2, there's been a huge amount of work done in Response 2 from what it was. So yes, things have changed. I would assume Smart prides itself on listening to teacher feedback, and in fact if you go to your help button, you can see that submit a feature request. So you can actually say, look, I wish Smart Response 2 did this. Smart take all that on board. They trial things with teachers. They send their software and hardware and GS into classes, and they're on a process of continual improvement. So my guess is every 3 months you probably see something that's going to be slightly different. You're certainly not in the realms of what you, if you're using 11.2 or 4, you're certainly not in those realms. There's so much more you can do that's based on how can we use that connectivity to the student's device to create better learning outcomes, and how can we actually capture feedback. So, okay, was that the last question, Crystal?
It was. Thanks, Kev.
No worries. Thanks for joining us today. I know it's the end of term. We probably won't have another webinar till week 2 or 3 next term, but keep an eye open for those. Hopefully next term we're going to have a few guest speakers as well. So thanks very much for your attendance. I will just now quickly end the broadcast.